Hello, welcome to IncGamers episode 82, which is going to be a bit of a special pre-E3 event, which should be interesting because we're kind of ad-libbing this as we go along. Oh, shouldn't have revealed that. Never mind. With me today, as I've got a full house again, as we did last week. So I'm going to introduce you to Paul Younger.
Good afternoon.
I'm also going to introduce you to Tim McDonald.
Hello.
And last but certainly not least, I'm going to introduce you to John Robertson.
Hello.
My name is Peter Parrish, as it was last week, and as it will continue to be. And let's kick off by talking about the big three main players at E3. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. We're going to have a bit of a discussion about what we think they're going to be showing at the event this year. Whether they're making any predictions for surprises that might be on the way. And let's start with Microsoft. I think they normally hold their conference first, so that would make sense. Probably going to be quite Kinect heavy this year, I would imagine. Does anyone else have anything they feel or think that Microsoft are going to be dropping on us this year? Aside from
new Avatar items, probably. Some new Zune Marketplace movies. Eurosport app on the dashboard.
There was.
Go on, Tim.
There was a rumor that they were working on Internet Explorer for the Xbox, an actual internet browser that would work on the Xbox, which would be interesting to see. I don't know whether there's any truth in that, but I suspect that if there is, we'll be hearing about it next week.
Indeed. None of these things are, I've noticed none of these things are games. Do we think that's going to be a bit of a theme for Microsoft's conference?
Well, other than Halo 4,
Yes.
there's Forza Horizon as well. I'm not sure how many other first-party games they've got under their belt to announce. I'm sure I'm missing something.
Maybe something from Epic. I don't know what Epic are working on at the moment.
Possibly. I don't know, unless it's Gears of War though. I don't know if it would be exclusive to the Xbox.
So nobody thinks... Here's a scenario for you, okay? The Microsoft conference kicks off with another one of those pre-recorded Kinect demonstrations or something, and it's looking like it's meandering towards its inevitable tedious conclusion. But then, suddenly, the lights go down, and Major Nelson shows up, and he's like, check it out, guys, new console for
Major
everyone.
Nelson.
Personally, I predict
In
that
his hands,
Microsoft...
he has a brand new, amazing Microsoft console. Any chance of that happening whatsoever?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
I think it's far more likely that the lights will go down, Major Nelson will come on the stage and just cry for half an hour.
Is that because Major's Minute got cancelled? Still upset about that. As he should be.
Well, I guess the problem that they've got is they're not going to release the consoles this year, are they? So they can't announce them this year, because as soon as you've done that, the current ones become redundant. People stop buying games for them, stop investing money in them, stop buying the consoles. So they're kind of caught now in this horrible situation where they've had the consoles out for so long and people are expecting new stuff, new big games, but why would a big games developer invest in a giant new IP when the next consoles are probably going to come out next Christmas, probably October, November next year? So I don't know.
Indeed.
It could just be an E3 full of sequels, the odd sort of new game, but I'm not expecting much. Certainly none that we don't already know about.
Go on, Paul.
I must admit, I'm not that excited about E3 this year, and I think John's right. I think there hasn't really been that much new or exciting to get worked up about. I don't know. It just all seems a little bit flat.
Well, I mean, this is why I'm trying to introduce the element of a potential surprise from from one of the participants. I mean, possibly there will be none from any of them, but I'm hoping for something from someone, to just try and, not a new console necessarily, because I think we've agreed that that's extremely unlikely. But I don't know, something. That's why it would be a surprise, I suppose. I know Microsoft are obviously going to go towards this whole Xbox Live as a service thing, so I'm sure they'll introduce more streaming video and stuff and whatnot, as you mentioned, John. But Tim, you had something you were going to say?
I was just going to say, I think it's unlikely that we're going to see a new console, but I don't think it's impossible. I do think that they'll probably be trying to push Kinect again. Once again, trying to push it for the hardcore more than anything. If we do see any big game announcements, I suspect that they're going to be reasonably Kinect focused. I don't know, possibly something about Fable as well. I mean, we've just had Fable Heroes, but I think that they've been working on something else. I don't know. Someone who actually pays attention, care to tell me I'm wrong.
A post-Molyneux Fable, Tim, what would that be like?
Much less ambitious, but a much better game.
Yeah.
At least you got Molyneux in. I'm impressed you got Molyneux in really early.
Well, Fable was mentioned. I had to get Molyneux in there. Is Molyneux going to be at E3? Does anyone know, with his 22 cans venture?
No, I don't.
That's not his venture, is it? That was Tim Rance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He just joined up later. Although I suppose if you have Molyneux in your company, you are going to wheel him out for precedence if you can.
Yeah. I just automatically assume when Peter Molyneux is associated with a company, he becomes the de facto figurehead of that company, I guess.
I like the way you say wheel him out. I can just kind of see him getting pushed out on a trolley, turtleneck, straight out the wardrobe, then just sort of wheeled back in again.
Indeed.
But speaking of Kinect, maybe an Epic, there was wasn't there a year ago, 2 years ago, wasn't there a rumor of an on-rails Gears of War shooter for Kinect?
I don't know if it was on rails. You might have heard more about this than I did. I do remember hearing that Epic were looking into Kinect for something, but I didn't catch any more details on it than that. I don't know.
I'd be interested in something like that from, a studio well respected by like the hardcore audience, and if that was enough to bring them over, a game properly focused on it, not just like the half-assed attempts of bringing it into Mass Effect and that sort of thing, but something actually properly based around it as an essential control scheme.
But it's I don't know, they keep trying to shoehorn this Kinect for the hardcore audience, and it really hasn't happened. They keep saying, "Oh, we're going to make it for the hardcore. We're going to make games for the hardcore," and it's just not happened. I think that the Star Wars Kinect thing that you had the displeasure of playing, John, that was kind of originally touted as being sort of towards the hardcore gamer, and basically it just turned into another typical Kinect, wave your hands around, play with the kids type game. I don't really see how they're going to achieve any much success for the hardcore audience, just because of the nature of the way the Kinect actually works.
Yeah, like the best one I've probably played is Child of Eden's probably the best one. I mean, that's like a really abstract idea, and it kind of works with those very broad, sweeping design styles, and sort of there's so much going on that you kind of have no idea what's going on. But when you try to shoehorn it into existing established genres, it does fall flat on its face, really. It's kind of understandable. It's kind of a completely new control scheme, but I think it's almost too much of a risk, or they see it as too much of a risk to plough too much money into developing a completely new way of playing with, which is a shame, because they've developed a control system which does work pretty well when someone puts their mind to it. Like the Star Wars game was crap, but the pod racing did work from a technical level as they had designed it to work, and it was surprisingly intuitive and responsive. So yeah,
it's kind of like with like the pod racing thing that may work. So Like, why try and put so much other stuff into it that doesn't work so well, instead of just concentrating on the stuff that actually does work? And this always seems to be the problem with it. Any Kinect stuff that I've played, it just seems to be like lots of mini games, or all things kind of put together, instead of going, this works really well, let's make this into a product in its own right. And I think that's one of the downfalls of Kinect.
Well, I've always felt that Kinect was really more of a test bed for whatever they were going to do with the next Xbox. I mean, it never felt quite as fully formed, I suppose, as you would want it to, in terms of actually being pushed and touted as a whole new control scheme and something very, very important. I mean, I know that all the rumours about the next Xbox are that it's going to have sort of Kinect built in, it's going to be a lot more major. And that was also very much the impression I got from the first Xbox back before the 360 came out. A lot of that actually felt like it was pretty much just a testing ground for what they did with the 360. But I suspect that Kinect, to some extent, is going to be built upon massively whenever we do hear about the next Xbox. But I don't know if they're going to push it. I don't know if they're going to succeed at pushing it too hard with the current iteration of the Xbox.
So are we basically agreeing then that it's going to be app heavy and Kinect heavy, but nothing much more than that?
Yeah, well, there'll be Halo will be pulled out, Forza will be pulled out, but yeah, all the rest, I can't see what else, unless they completely blow you away with something. I mean, in my notes here on like sort of outside chance rumours, I've put proper new Alan Wake, as in Alan Wake 2, like maybe something like that.
Yeah, interesting.
Would that necessarily be Xbox exclusive? I don't know whether they've still got the licensing deal with Microsoft for that. It would be interesting to see, certainly, and I do think that we will see a couple of surprises, definitely. I mean, there will almost certainly be a couple of new big game announcements. I'm just amazed that they haven't really been leaked so far.
Indeed. And whatever happened to Milo, eh? Speaking of the Kinect.
Oh, he's dead.
He's dead?
He's dead.
Oh, wow.
Molyneux killed him.
That's a terrible thing to say. Okay, so on that rather somber note, what about Sony? What do they... I mean, much as Microsoft is pushing Kinect, I would imagine Sony will be pushing Vita.
I'm hoping for a new handheld that will also be named after a Swedish crisp bread, that we can all get excited about, and I'm really hoping they pull this one out of the bag this year.
Something to look forward to. There has been a rumour that they're going to do some kind of on-live deal, so getting big into cloud gaming. I don't know if that's really progressed beyond rumour stage, but sort of linking that either on live or Gaikai with the PS3. It's just a rumor though. That'd be fairly major, I think, if they were to do something like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of their press conference will focus on the Vita, and a lot of the Vita bit will focus on the cross-platform play. Hopefully there'll be more examples of that as well. If they can wheel Kojima out and get something with Metal Gear Solid and the Vita and PS3 working together. Kojima can walk by himself.
I can just see both of them, Molyneux and him, being wheeled out.
Kojima gets wheeled out as Molyneux's being wheeled back in. They just sort of wave sullenly at each other.
It's sort of a revolving door. You've got Molyneux on one side and Kojima on the other, and it just spins depending on the conference.
But no, yeah, I think a lot will focus on that. But I can't see any of it being super exciting. I mean, the Vita... I mean, I was excited about it for a week after it came out, and now I think, like most people...
A whole week?
I mean, I don't know. Dipping in and out of it every now and again, mostly just when I've got stuff to review. And I mean, when I am playing games, sometimes you think, oh, okay, yeah, this is really good. And then I don't know, and then you're asked to do some touchscreen crap, or the battery runs out, and it's just like, well, stuff it. Like,
that's kind of true of most systems until they've actually got a reasonably big base of games for them.
Yeah, it's been out.
I think the problem
with the games.
I think the problem with the Vita and the 3DS right now is they don't really have any huge killer apps.
Yeah, I'd love it if they released, if they announced Gran Turismo for the Vita and had that cross-compatible with the PS3.
Don't say killer apps, Tim, please.
Sorry. I will put out a prediction right now that we will see...
Web 2.0 hipster.
Shut up. I will put out a prediction right now that we will see more character announcements for Sony Smash Brothers. And that's probably going to focus in their presentation reasonably heavily.
Yeah. And they'll probably...
Sorry, carry on.
They'll probably spend at least 45 minutes talking about how successful PlayStation Home is and how it will only continue to be more successful, even though no one I know has ever spent more than 20 seconds in there. So it makes Second Life look like the best theme park you've ever seen.
Looking forward to seeing more of the guy, I forgot his name, I should have looked it up, but the guy who did start up during the conference last year, who after Sony had been hacked and lost the details of millions of people, basically came out and said, "Oh, you journalists, you must love us for making this story for you," or something, failing completely to apologise for this gigantic lapse in security. I hope he's back. He was great. I loved him.
Yeah, he's good with words.
Yeah. Not so good at apologies, though.
No, he's a politician. Yeah, they'll show The Last of Us as well, I suppose, and Dust 5 and 4 they'll probably speak a lot about.
Yes.
Which does actually look quite good, actually.
Yeah, the Last of Us looks good as well. It's Naughty Dog, right? That's not their new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That should be interesting. Anything else that we can dig up to think that Sony might have?
But this is how unexciting it is. You kind of previous.
It kind of is, yeah.
You're kind of oh, this is going to be announced, or this game's going to be shown, and it's like, how many days? We're not that far away from it day-wise. Normally you're flooded with trailers and exciting things, and really doesn't seem to be that much hype or excitement about it. So maybe this is an indication that there's some massive announcements coming. I don't know.
Exactly.
I was going to say, in part, yeah, that might be an indication. I mean, last year and the year before, if I remember rightly, a huge amount of stuff was leaked prior to the conferences themselves. I mean, I don't know whether we'll see the same thing this year or whether they've actually managed to keep their surprises under wraps so far. It might be that they are actually wanting to make their conferences as impressive as possible. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my excitement level for E3 isn't particularly high this year, but that may well change once the conferences get underway, because they're normally reasonably entertaining to watch. Oh, that's something else we'll probably see, actually. God of War at the Sony one. God of War Origins, or whatever it was, which will please the people who, for some reason, actually enjoy God of War.
Oh.
No one going to bite on that? Okay.
I don't have a PS3, so I wouldn't know, but...
No, Paul's right in that last year, even for the games that we knew about, we were bombarded the week before, so the week we're in, with trailers, screenshots, press releases, floods of stuff. If only... It seemed almost just to put in the back of your mind, remember, this is going to be here, so you need to cover this when you're writing about it, when you're writing about the show. But we just had nothing, probably 20% of the amount we had last year, we've had this year of that sort of stuff. There's just been nothing.
One of the things, that's just talking to a few PR people earlier this week, and it's actually amazing the amount of journals that just are not doing it. They're just not that interested in going and covering it, and I think this is an indication, really, that people are not expecting that much. But we'll see.
I was going to say, do you think that this is maybe a bit of an indication that even the publishers and the big names themselves have started to not see E3 as the be all and end all?
I just think we're in a really weird period right now, transition, like John quite rightly said, with the hardware, and you only so much you can push the current hardware that's available, and I kind of feel there's a real lack of creativity with regards to what titles are coming out. I mean, how many times it's just the same stuff being kind of recycled, and I think last year was particularly bad for sequels, and maybe this year's not been great either. There just isn't that much excitement or creativity happening right now.
No, I agree. I'm actually playing a game now, which I probably can't mention in case I get my hands cut off for breaking the embargo, but it's a certain third-person shooter that isn't a sequel from a Japanese publisher, and it shows no creativity at all. It is so boring. It feels like I've played it a million times, and that's just... I mean, every month I find myself playing a game like that, especially with shooters, which seem to be this generation's sort of like big ticket. They're just copy and paste.
Sorry, no, carry on.
No, I'm done. That's it.
I was just going to say, there are, before we get too down on the entire industry, there are certainly quite a few individual games that I'm looking forward to, and I'm keen to see, hopefully at E3, which we'll be getting on to a little bit later on, because I want us to talk about Nintendo's conference as well, which will of course be very Wii U centric, and a certain... Oh, Paul, come on, I know. Paul, you're not keen on Nintendo.
Nintendo?
Oh. Then again, I did hear a story before this podcast began, Paul.
Yeah, shut up.
That when playing a certain Super Mario game, you were unable to master it, despite saying it was for children. So
it was.
I don't know whether
It was just pointless. Shut up, Tim. What are you laughing at?
It
wasn't even worth
I
trying.
thought that was obvious.
It was just beneath you, right? It wasn't even worth trying.
Just this mushroom coin collecting thing. It was just completely pointless. Just
How
wasted
can you
my
not-
time. There was no.
How can you not like Mario?
I used to love Mario when he was on the bloody Game and Watch and all that stuff. The really early, yeah, I know. Donkey Kong. I know Donkey Kong was great, but I just don't. Oh, they're all the same. It's all the same. Just better graphics. It's all the same.
Can I actually...
Mario Galaxy's
Am I allowed to call him an idiot at this point? Is that acceptable?
Go on. No, go ahead.
Oh, you are an idiot.
No, okay, he's arse.
I don't even know where to begin tearing that apart.
Mario's arse. Head and hands. Tim's head and hands already.
I think we know who's not going to be covering the Nintendo conference for us. Which I'm sure will feature the appearance of a certain plumber, because I think they've pretty much confirmed a new Mario game for the Wii U, haven't they? I think I seem to remember
that's what they need to do. They need to start now showing us some proper demos of how this stuff's going to work.
Yeah.
They need to show Zelda, and they need to show big games, Zelda, Metroid, Mario, whatever else.
I'm pretty sure we're going to see Mario.
Pokemon. We have... Oh, have we? No, that's how much attention I've been paying.
No, not that we've actually... They've said that there will be a Mario game on the system. I'm just saying I think we will probably see them showing it. This week.
Well, they need to show that and those other ones, Pokemon, Zelda, and all that, because otherwise people are just not going to get. You can only get people excited so much about the hardware from a technical perspective and just giving stats and what it might do without actually showing it. You're not going to get the impact that you want.
Likewise, I think it's going to be, particularly with Nintendo, a lot of it's going to come down to the first-party games. I mean, I know that they've been going on about how they've been paying attention to the hardcore with the Wii U, and they've got all these deals, and you're going to see the best versions of certain games on the Wii U. But that doesn't really change the fact that they're still the same games. If you want to give people a reason to pick up your system, it usually has to be something exclusive to that system itself.
Alternatively, they could just do a video rerun of last year's conference. Just be done with it.
No, they're going to show something new. New things, exciting things. Come on.
I am a little bit worried about what the third-party publishers are going to do. The only person I've spoken to face-to-face that's developing for the Wii U, and they wouldn't give much info, is the Darksiders 2 guys. But all they've said, all they told me anyway, so it's not all they're going to do with it, potentially, is that on the tablet they're going to have like interactive maps, so you don't need to go into the menu to put up a dungeon map, or you can like mess around with your inventory on the tablet. I mean, that sounds, it's okay, but it just sounds like they're trying to bring a DS into your living room by having a giant screen that you play on and then a screen that you touch.
To be fair, I don't think that that's necessarily a terrible idea, and depending on the price of this controller itself. On the sheer basis that I am a pretty strong advocate for the DS most of the time anyway. I mean, I really, really like the DS. I think it's a fabulous system. And I think that there is some really, really useful functionality, which you can see with some of the games on the DS, which then got ported over... some of the games on Game Boy, which got ported over to the DS, which used the DS functionality quite well. Bits and pieces like... the Phoenix Wright series, where you didn't have to go into another menu in order to look at the evidence or present evidence or anything like that. It made the game a lot more fluid and a lot easier to play. And I do think that while that's not exactly groundbreaking or amazing or in itself a reason to pick up the system, I do think that it is one of those little things which is a really nice addition. I'm looking. I hope that they can do something a little bit better with it than just having a map, because that would seem a bit pointless, particularly if this is going to be hugely expensive. But I don't think it's right to get too down on it, because if the DS has shown anything, it's that this sort of thing can actually work really well.
Yeah, no, I am excited about it, but it's just the same old thing with Nintendo. Until they can prove that they give enough support and enough opportunity to third-party publishers, I don't see why you would buy the console if you don't like the first-party games.
I think yesterday THQ said that Metro Last Light is sort of no longer going to be on the Wii U, which it was going to be originally. Like, it was in the lineup last year as one of the games that was going to be on there. But now they've said, well, we're just going to focus on kind of what we know. I mean, maybe a Wii U one will show up later, but.
Is that anything about the Wii U, do we think, though, or is that just because THQ's hemorrhaging money and they're basically trying to play it safe by only putting it out on the systems they know they can do quickly and efficiently?
Yes,
that they know it'll get sales on.
I think if it makes enough money, it'll eventually come to the Wii U. If it shifts enough copies, builds a big enough name for itself. But just off the back of a sequel to Metro 2033, I'm not sure if there's any point of putting it out on a new system.
Indeed. So, anything else that we think Nintendo will be showing?
Plumber.
Who are they going to wheel?
They're going to try and push the 3DS again, inevitably, which is the one thing we haven't talked too much about.
Yes.
Because the 3DS is the 3DS. It hasn't really done phenomenally well. So I kind of hope that they're going to be announcing a few titles for that which are actually going to get people excited. Was there a Super Smash Brothers game that they were working on for that? I mean, I think it's too early to see anything on that.
Yeah, but there was a rumor that they were working on that, and a proper Pokemon RPG as well, but they weren't officially confirmed or dated or given titles.
I think with Super Smash Brothers, if I remember rightly, it was more that they were, whenever it was last year, one of the developers basically came out and said they were in the stages of talking about doing it. Which I think it's far too early to see anything on that, but I suspect we're probably going to see a couple of announcements for the 3DS as well. I think they're going to be trying to push that fairly hard. Although there again, if with this conference they are really going to try and push the Vita and kind of kick off the PR frenzy before the Wii U, and kick off the PR frenzy before the Wii U actually launches, then the 3DS might get sidelined a bit. I just don't know if they can risk doing that, really, considering how it's doing in the market at the moment.
The thing is, though, if there's no other hardware being announced, this is the year for them to do it. I mean, really, with everyone kind of went, "Ooh, what's this?" Last year, and because it's nothing planned as far as we know for Microsoft and Sony, they could really do well out of it. But it's just, like you say, how much information are they going to give us?
Yes and no.
And
sorry, go on.
No, go on.
I'll argue in a moment.
Well, this could be. How long's the 3DS been out now? It's
too long.
Over a year and a half. I mean,
too long.
It's about time they could feasibly announce a 3DS Lite or a 3DS that includes the Circle Pad Pro with as part of the console.
Yeah, get it repackaged.
Oh, there's a huge surprise. Nintendo repackaging something. They just make it an extra 2mm thinner, or change the color of it, or
Yeah, well, seriously, they need to incorporate the Circle Pad Pro into the console, because if you've ever played Metal Gear Solid 3D Snake Eater without the Circle Pad Pro, you've probably destroyed your 3DS by now.
I don't know if they can actually risk doing that, though, if only because it will piss off anyone who actually bought a 3DS before and hasn't bought a Circle Pad Pro. Simply, it's kind of akin to what Microsoft did when they released the whichever variant of the Xbox it was that didn't actually have a hard drive, which was a terrible, terrible idea.
Arcade thing.
Yes, but also meant then that games couldn't be reliant on the hard drive itself, which caused a fair few problems, if I remember rightly. So I don't know if they can actually risk doing that without massively pissing off their user base, the loyal user base that actually bought the 3DS on launch.
Yeah, but they seem to release a new DS every month.
True.
The 4DS.
Different colours.
I think that Nintendo are in a really, really tricky position. Because what they really need to do with the Wii U is try to recapture the hardcore to some extent. The problem that they have, they kind of need to get the system out first so that it gets the attention, but they also don't want to get it out so early that the 360, or sorry, the next Xbox and the next PS3 are going to be far more powerful, because they don't want to be last in the power stakes again. As the Wii, much as the Wii did really, really well, the amount of software and third-party support they had kind of killed it in the late stages. I don't know. I think they're in a really tricky position with timing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Dreamcast almost. That came out too early.
Yeah,
got destroyed by the PS2.
That kind of goes back to what I was saying about the pissing off your user base, because the Dreamcast came out really soon after the Saturn, and everyone who bought a Saturn was really pissed off with Sega at that point. Because rather than kind of taking...
With something you said, Tim, does Nintendo really have to go after this mythical hardcore audience, whoever they are? Because, I mean, the Wii did spectacularly well, very much not going after that. Hardcore is such a rubbish term, because
yes.
It's like, why... You could be a hardcore Mario player, if you're like amazing at it, but for some reason it doesn't apply to that. It's a weird...
Absolutely true. It's a terrible piece of terminology that I'm just using rather than trying to define something new and wasting 5 minutes of everybody's time.
So,
what was the question?
Do you mean the games with soldiers and guns in them, Tim? Is that what you mean?
To an extent. Well, the thing is, I don't know if and again, I hesitate to use the term, but I don't know if the casual market would be the ones who would be likely to buy a Wii U on launch. They've already got a Wii. They've already got the games on that they either play or don't play, like Wii Sports and so on and so forth. They're not the ones who are likely to go out immediately on launch and buy a Wii U. If the Wii U's initial sales want to be high, I think they kind of need to get the people... I'm just going to use the term again. They need to get the hardcore excited.
But why would you go for the Wii U to get... I don't know, these third-party games that are also going to be coming out on PC, 360, PS3.
That's exactly the problem that I think they're facing. and I'm really
Which
looking
is why I
forward to
think
their
they
answer.
should just wheel out Mario. Yeah, wheel out. There we go. You should get Mario out again and go, hey, it's Mario. Everyone who loves Mario, get the Wii U.
Well, that's the thing. We're kind of talking. We're kind of talking about exactly what happened last year, where all the stuff on the Wii U pretty much focused on all the third-party deals that they had and all these games that were going to come out on the Wii U that were already coming out on the 360 and PS3. And much as it was quite nice, it was hard to see why you would buy a Wii U in favour of just buying these games on a system that you already had. And that, as I say, I think that's part of the problem they face. They need something to actually be able to attract the people who are likely to be buying this system on launch.
Okay, well, other than the fact that we're not really sure what's going to happen next week, what other games that are not going to be on the big three are we looking forward to?
Yes, indeed, yes. Thanks for moving us on, Paul. That's normally my job.
Yeah, no, I just
Tim,
Tim was rabbiting. Like, he could debate this all afternoon. I mean, he had to be stopped, or he was going to go. He was going to go into some JRPG thing in a minute. So.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing. All Nintendo need to do to get the hardcore is put Princess Peach in a thong, put it really big on a back cover, and that's it. I'll buy that, 40 quid, whatever.
Oh, dear.
I would.
I will not buy that. Out of shame.
Thinking of games that are going to be at E3, actually, that has made me think of one thing which we will almost certainly be seeing at, or which we might well see at the Microsoft press conference, which is moving back rather than forward. But Black Ops. If they try and do anything akin to what they did with Modern Warfare 3 and 2 and so on and so forth, there's probably going to be some 360 bits and bobs for that. Okay, that's it. Carry on.
I imagine so.
Yeah, but fuck Black Ops 2. It's tedious shite. I'm interested in.
I like it.
I like it.
Good for you. Maybe you'd like to talk about it.
No.
What are you excited for in Black Ops 2, Tim? Are you excited for when the men shoot the other men with the guns, and then the Hollywood set
but they'll have
happen?
new perks, and there'll be like a new ACR assault rifle.
Maybe it'll be as good as Black Ops 1, where you get stuck in the wardrobe within the first 5 minutes of playing the game. Really, yeah.
I didn't experience that, but it sounds good.
No, look, I'm actually fed up of this whole Call of Duty crap. I really am. Come on, let's have some originality.
I'm really not. I will fully agree on the terms of originality and so on, but much as a lot of people hate the Call of Duty series, I think that they're really well-made games that are quite good fun to play, particularly in multiplayer.
Execute it.
Sorry, Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to try and get us away from Black Ops 2 because I don't know what... There's a paucity of discussion there, I think. Oh, other than the fact that they've had convicted congressional criminal Oliver North talking about it and hyping it up for them, which is awesome. Way to hire a war criminal, Activision. Good work.
It's edgy.
Edgy, yeah, edgy.
It's not...
That's the equivalent of the airport scene from the last one. Let's get Oliver North.
Brilliant scene, memorable scene of this generation.
Oh God!
As we progress through the series, perhaps they're just going to stage an actual terrorist event to promote Black Ops 12 or something. I don't know. Anyway,
maybe
going to blow up the London Eye, and no one will give a shit.
Maybe it'll be a raid on Bobby Kotick's Golden Mansion.
having him airlifted away in a black chopper to an undisclosed external rendition location. Maybe. But that's getting off the point, I think. What other games are people looking forward to? Anyway, on jump.
Well, hopefully Rockstar will show something with Grand Theft Auto, but I'm not 100% sure that they will. Although it has been quiet on the Grand Theft Auto front since the announcement, so perhaps. I also hope maybe that surprise announcement will be that it releases this year, although that's incredibly unlikely. But that would be pretty welcome.
Well, there was a rumor, wasn't there, that BioShock Infinite got pushed back to kind of make space for, because it's the same publisher, to make space for Grand Theft Auto 5.
No, that would be interesting.
I think that was speculation rather than anything factual. I'm hoping to see something from Thief 4 now that Eidos Montreal have kind of finished with the development cycle and release of SX Human Revolution, and they continued that series nicely. I'm pretty hopeful for what they're going to do with the Thief series, and I want to see something from that.
I don't really give a shit whether they actually show anything from Thief 4. I just hope that they actually announce a different name than Thief 4. If they do that, I'll be happy.
Just give us an awkward-looking logo with the 4 in the middle instead of the A, which is just not a great sign.
Just Thief the Return or something like that, Tim. Would that make you happy? Thief the Revenge.
No, because that wouldn't really make much sense. Just changing the name to Thief 4 would be quite good, rather than Thief 4th.
Thief 4th.
Well, Thief 3 had Thief Deadly Shadows, which is already quite stupid.
Yes.
Because the shadows themselves were not deadly, either to the protagonist or to the enemies, because it was what was in the shadows that was dangerous, i.e. you.
No, they were just bloody scary when you played the Cradle.
Yes, excellent level.
Well, I do know that a couple of the Square Enix marketing team from the UK have been in Canada recently and I saw them earlier this week, and they wouldn't tell me what they were there for, so maybe it's something to do with that.
Could be. Actually, speaking of Square, I'd be quite interested in seeing a Just Cause 3 announcement, if they would like to make one of those. I don't know if they will, but
I don't think they'll announce that while Sleeping Dogs, which is another open world game, is still kind of in the marketing push.
That's a very interesting point. Actually, I'm interested in Sleeping Dogs as well. The more videos of that I see, and actually the more previews that I read that you've been writing, John, I'm quite interested in that game. Looks quite good.
Yeah, it does look quite good. I'm still afraid that it's going to be released in the crazy amount of Grand Theft Auto previews are likely to come out at that time, so I still expect it to be lost. Could be one of those sleeper hits though. Could just steadily sell a stream of units every week rather than break into the top 10 instantly.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's looking promising. I'd also like to see some news that Prey 2 is still alive in some form, but
yeah, that would be interesting.
I don't know whether it's because that really looked good last year.
What about the new Skyrim MMO? Anyone got any thoughts on that?
I don't care.
Not Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, I should say.
Yeah.
I still don't care.
I'm interested in that. I mean, there's a lot of questions, like how are they going to make it Elder Scrolls exactly, and not just another fantasy MMO? But
they're not. It's going to be another fantasy MMO.
Tim, why are you so upset by this, Tim?
I'm not upset. I just think that it looks hideously boring and derivative from everything I've seen about it. But I think that it looks like WoW in new clothing again.
Are most MMOs not hideously derivative?
Yep.
Yes, normally they're at least slightly interesting. I haven't seen anything about this that's actually piqued my interest at all.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I don't think there are people who will argue with me on this, but I don't think that Elder Scrolls has a particularly fascinating world. For the most part, it's largely dull. Skyrim had some nice stuff with that, with the Thalmor, except that we're going back into the past, and it just looks. I just don't care. I've seen nothing about it that actually looks interesting. There's a lot of potential for an Elder Scrolls MMO, which we went over in that article. Sort of
the anti-hype team. It's great.
Yeah, Tim, you should get a job in PR. You're just the best.
With the reverse of those embarrassing
campaigning.
Sorry, am I supposed to be shouting about how great it looks? I didn't realise I had actually been hired by PR.
No, we're just testing.
Oh, it's great.
We're testing you out, Tim.
It's great. With the reverse of those embarrassing shots you see from E3 where they reveal something and all the pseudo-journalists go like, yeah, woo, woo. It's like, what the fuck? You're a journalist. You're not supposed to be like raving about this. keep calm.
When I was at E3 a couple of years ago, that made me want to kill everyone in the room. There was a point, I think this was a few years back. This was when Dragon Age was being announced, and BioWare's presentation for it revolved around combat with the dragon, and showing off the sex scenes.
Well, if you...
And the point where they started showing off the sex scenes, everyone else in the room started whooping and applauding, and I wanted to murder every single person there.
If you listen really closely to that press conference, you can just hear a little voice go, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And that's Tim.
Yep.
You hear a door closing as he walks out.
Yeah, just a sort of thud. Clunk.
Well, you know what? Another one I'm interested in. It's kind of a. I think it was mentioned in the Good Old Games, or GOG as they're called now, conference day, which is Retro City Rampage, which is kind of a sort of indie-ish project, which is looking pretty interesting. It's sort of going back to the early style of Grand Theft Auto games, that sort of top-down-ish look, but it's got like 8/16-bit pixel art to it. Kind of open world. It's also full of like 80s film references and 90s film references. Like Bill and Ted show up in it at one point from the gameplay that I've seen. It's got some nice chiptunes soundtrack to it as well. This is looking quite good.
I will agree with you that I'm really looking forward to Retro City Rampage. I do really want to see more on that. I don't know, isn't that sort of due out in a month or so? Do you think that's going to be pushed to E3 or?
He's certainly. Yeah, I looked at the website recently to see if it had a release date, and it mentioned E3. So I think he's certainly going to be there. He was like lining up E3 interviews and stuff. So I think it's probably going to get. It's probably going to get like a pre-release push. It might actually get a release date, which would be nice.
What about stuff like Far Cry 3? Exciting.
You know what? I was interested in Far Cry 3 until I saw that video of the burning building, which was just so like linear and hand-holdy that it really put me off. I was massively disappointed in that. I mean, I hope the rest of the game isn't like that because yeah, it was disappointing. Unfortunately, I don't know if anyone else saw that video and had anything.
No, all I've seen from Far Cry are combat scenes, which looked like they sort of threw you down a certain path pretty heavily, but I don't know, I guess it's one of those games that's difficult to demo. I think it's always difficult to demo an open world game unless you get someone to sit there for 2 hours. And certainly in the case of a video, try and get it across in 2 minutes is going to be pretty difficult. But I don't know, on the whole I'm not really that excited about it. But then I didn't finish Far Cry 2 all the way through. So it's probably got something to do with that. I'm just not really engaged with that series very much at the moment.
So basically,
Far Cry 2.
Basically, the problem is it's just more of the same. We're kind of in the same boat where all the stuff that is sort of the big AAA or big releases are more of the same. Is that why we're not generally that excited?
Yeah, probably.
The pieces, the articles, the games I'm looking forward to are a lot of them are sort of looking backwards, certainly. Like I also want to see some gameplay from Dishonored, which is looking really good. But it's looking good because it reminds me of stuff like the Thief series and a bit of Deus Ex, a bit of Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. It's exciting me because it's going back to a previous era, which hasn't been so represented recently. So I'm glad of that. But
yeah, I feel like that about XCOM. Which we previewed recently. Yeah, go on.
That was exactly the point that I was going to make, really. It's going back to an older style of game to some extent, but it's an older style of game that does stuff that we really don't see very much. I mean, looking at sort of the things that I'm really interested in, things like Thief 4, Dishonored, Bioshock Infinite to some extent, and most definitely XCOM. That is to say, the turn-based XCOM as opposed to the first-person shooter thing. I mean, these are all generally old games. I mean, that probably ties into my tastes a little bit as well, and the sheer nostalgia factor. But these are the things that actually look most interesting to me more than anything, because they're doing stuff that's not just another sequel of a franchise that we've seen sequels of last year and the year before and the year before.
So is it
basically Sorry.
Is it basically then that we're all looking for something a little bit more complex and a little bit more unique and a little bit more original? That's the only thing that's going to get us excited.
Yeah, pretty much.
To a degree, yeah.
I'd agree with that to an extent, and I think I could probably tie that into Far Cry 3 as well. If they actually showed that off as being more open-worldy, even if it was just open-worldy in the same way as Far Cry, the original was, or Crysis was, where it was reasonably linear, but there were lots of ways to approach each situation, that would be fine by me. That would actually pique my interest. I don't know.
I have also, in my notes here, I've written down Star Wars, because LucasArts say they're going to be revealing a new direction, new series, I guess, within the Star Wars universe.
The next Star Wars 2?
No, because it's going to be a new one. Tim, sadly, Connect Star Wars 2 will have to wait.
Just give us a good version of XV That's
yeah, indeed. Yeah, I don't think it will be that, because they're touting it as sort of a new thing. But I mean, it could have a new name and essentially be X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, and I'd be perfectly happy.
Or TIE Fighter versus X-Wing.
Yes. Completely different game.
Oh God. Oh no.
What?
I've just had this sudden horrible thought that they are actually going to leverage that, and they're going to turn it into an Xbox Live Arcade game. That won't work really well with the gamepad and will not be particularly open or fly, and will be a very, very cut down version of X-Wing. I hope that doesn't happen. That would make me sad.
They could do TIE Fighter HD and just re-release it. That'd be good. Speaking of,
I think we're just a difficult. Perhaps because we spend so much time playing games, play all the games. Just a difficult bunch to please, really. Like, we want completely new stuff, but then I complained about first-person shooters being the same, but then I still wanted to play Call of Duty multiplayer, and I still want to play FIFA every year, and I hope they don't change Forza too much. But then I want BioShock to be different. I want a new kind of first-person shooter. I want a new kind of shooter that's maybe not first-person. Like, I don't know. There's just so much there that you take a lot for granted, but then expect so much different, but not too different. So.
I think that's kind of true of gamers in general. You want something new, but when there is something new, we usually don't buy it. Instead, we want something that's familiar, but looks or sounds new, I guess. It's kind of
or
weird.
it's just more polished, for example. I don't know. Like when Bayonetta came out, that wasn't particularly original, but it was just brilliantly polished, so it got away with whatever it wanted to do. So
I think that's partly why you see more sequels in this industry that are actually sometimes better than the originals, which is less common in film, because obviously you've got all this stuff that the developers were wanting to put into the first game but didn't have time or didn't have the resources, and then they do have the resources, so then in the sequel they do add all this stuff, and it turns into a better game, and then you end up with series whatever.
Yeah, well,
going on for ages.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that kind of thing a couple of years ago. As long as games are primarily technology driven, the next game will always be the best game. You will never get that, oh, I'm going to go back and play a game from 20 years ago tonight, like you do with a film. Like, I'm going to watch Taxi Driver or Raging Bull or whatever.
And if you, John, I'm sorry. Queuing up to disagree with you.
Yeah, John's not been reading the Diablo forums then. There's a prime example where it's a new game, new technology and so on, but there's a portion of the player base that actually prefer the old game and will probably carry on playing the old game. And it's not because the new game, it's just the new game's just different and it's incredibly polished.
Yeah, I guess I mean kind of more from a general perspective, from a perspective of where the money's going to go. Like in films, you get re-releases at cinema of films that are 50 years old. I can't imagine the publisher ploughing that much money into it. Into like re-releasing E.T. on the Atari 2600 or whatever.
It's because E.T. was terrible. No one.
Okay, well, some other 2600 game.
Robotron or something. But I mean, those games are now going to other platforms. I mean, the sort of 8-bit classics are kind of being re-released for phones and stuff, aren't they? Because they're really good for quick, gratifying gameplay on the move, and then they're quite easy to translate into that medium. So isn't that what's happening with the older ones?
Also tend to be cheapy bits and pieces on services like Xbox Live Arcade. Yeah, that does happen. I don't know, I just argue with the principle that once games are old, nobody plays them anymore, because there are huge retro gaming communities out there. And I spend a hell of a lot of time playing older games which haven't been in stores for 20 years, haven't been on sale for 20 years, even through things like GOG. Honestly, in large part, I don't know, that might not be true for most of the gamers out there, and particularly newer gamers. A lot of the old games had interface problems, which makes them really difficult to get back into. But for those of us who actually remember that sort of thing, the advent of things like DOSBox and GOG, particularly, who sell games that they've fixed up to work on newer operating systems and so on, I think it's a bit of a godsend. And the fact that GOG is doing so well in general, I think indicates there is definitely a market out there for the classic games.
So, also, do you think that there's a lot of really cracking indie titles coming up that just will not be at E3? So we're kind of it's kind of like a whole section that is not represented, and I think that's quite important as well, because some of the indie titles are some of the most original and exciting looking titles that come out, because there's no big publisher there.
Yeah, and that kind of, I suppose, I should have clarified what I said before, in that the next game is always the best game, in that when a game is purely derived from its technology. So you're saying, like, you do play the older games, but how many PS1 games do you play that are purely graphical driven? Like, how many people play Tomb Raider 1 now? But people will still play 2D games because they're not driven by the technology, they're driven by the design, like many indie games are. So they will stay relevant far longer than Gears of War will, because that will just instantly be obsolete as soon as the graphics get upgraded again.
That's a really interesting point, actually, one that I've thought about a lot. I would argue it to an extent, in that a lot of the earlier games with 2D graphics are really ugly. They can be kind of hard to play because they look utterly hideous. When you look towards the end of the 2D, I hesitate to use the term again, but the end of the 2D life cycle, bits and pieces like the Mario games on the SNES, they look gorgeous.
Yeah, and they don't look out of date at all.
Yeah. Whereas, as you said, when you look at the earlier 3D games, they look hideous. Yeah, I do think that's a problem, particularly with anything that derives a lot of itself from atmosphere. A little while ago, I tried playing a really old first-person shooter horror game. It was Clive Barker's Undying, which when it first came out, I remembered as actually being quite scary, and playing it recently, it's just laughable more than anything. Just because the models are low polygon, the textures are low resolution, it just looks awful, and you cannot take it seriously at all. So yeah, you've certainly got a point there, and I think the interfaces in particular have improved massively as time has gone on.
Just going back to E3, I mean, obviously we are seeing a lot of publishers playing pretty safe. Do you think E3 will become less relevant? I know we've had this discussion years before where they actually stopped it for a couple of years, but things have changed a lot in the last sort of 12 months with indie developers, and especially with the Kickstarter stuff too. Is it going to become less relevant?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's becoming more of a just like a I'm not sure how to word it, like a backpatting contest almost for publishers to say like, oh how big and fancy we are. This is all the stuff we're doing. But this year in particular, I've noticed there have been an incredible amount of, in the UK anyway, an incredible amount of pre-E3 preview events with publishers making sure you see their titles and making sure that they get coverage away from the avalanche of stuff that's going to hit during E3 and just potentially get lost in. Like THQ held a big day. 2K showed off XCOM, and there's all the FIFA stuff that's just hit the site. But there's Hitman stuff coming out.
This was, I think, last year was sort of the first year they really started to push stuff pre-E3, and like it seems that this is the same again. So yeah, you do have to wonder, what the aim is with it, overall. What's the purpose of it?
Yeah, because I guess it started off as like a place for players of games, not journalists, not people in the business, to pick up and play games in their hands before it comes out. But now it's turned more into just a giant advertising platform.
It's always been like that, though, John. I mean, if you look back, I think I've been about 10 times. Even if you go back to '97, it really was a big advertising platform. It really. It's not really changed much at all, and I think that's the reason why they canned it, because they kind of realised it was getting out of hand. I mean, some ridiculous amount of people went that year. The year before they canned it, it was just like a big circus.
Yeah, to an extent, it doesn't seem to be keeping up with modern trends. Like mobile gaming is enormous, and you don't hear any of that. PC gaming, certainly through digital distribution, is much bigger than it has been in the last few years, but it's very home console focused at E3. So yeah, it does only represent a large slice, but still only a slice of the industry.
I must admit, I much more enjoyed Gamescom last year than I did any previous E3s. I just kind of thought the setup was better, and it was actually quite nice having the public there as well.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of too early to call how relevant or irrelevant E3 is. If only because I think that this year's kind of going to prove that to some extent. I mean, this year, as you said, there's been a lot of pre-E3 events, and we haven't been deluged with trailers and press releases. This might be because they're saving all the big surprises for E3 itself, and the instant we actually start looking at the conferences and so on, we are going to be blown away. There's a chance that this is going to happen. On the other hand, there is also the chance that absolutely sod all is going to happen, and it is going to seem like E3 is dying. I mean, I kind of think that next week is going to be a good indication of how relevant E3 is, particularly because it seems to be so weak right now.
Right, we're complaining about not having lots of stuff coming. You do realise that we've just opened up a whole shitstorm.
I'm not complaining.
Because tomorrow the emails just be going to go. I don't want that. I really don't want that.
I'm not complaining. I'm just stating it as fact.
It was fine by me if the publishers want to space out their reveals throughout the year.
Over 12 months would be good.
Yeah, and it makes sense for them to do so, surely. Everyone fighting for space in the same week kind of seems a bit counterproductive.
Well, to be fair, they kind of do that anyway. If you think of the big periods for games throughout the year anyway, like trying to get your game out for Christmas and so on and so forth. There are always points where they're kind of fighting it out, even though that does seem rather counterproductive. Yes.
So basically, we've covered the sort of things we're looking forward to, the things that are not going to happen. That's just about is it, really?
I don't know. I think that probably pretty much wraps it up, doesn't it? We've been over the.
Of course. Next week when we do the podcast during E3, we'll all be super hyped and excited, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, the press conferences do a good job of getting you hyped and excited.
I'll be running high on some kind of stimulants, I'm sure.
Next week during E3 when we do the podcast, I'm probably going to be wishing I was dead. I'm not sure hyped and excited is really the term I'd use.
Is that not the same as every week for you, Tim?
Some weeks. E3 though, oh dear.
So yeah, as you, John, do you have something else to?
Well, yeah, I was just hoping that rumored Soul Reaver game is actually a real thing. Because that would be pretty cool. And Tomb Raider has got delayed as well, so I don't know, maybe.
There's a lot being delayed in early 2013. That seems to be the trend at the moment. Push your game into next year. Anyway,
no, forget it. That's stupid. I'm not going to say it. Carry on.
I'm trying to wrap up, Tim. I'm trying to stop this podcast going on for like 11 years.
Go.
Which, I've got to do this whole preamble about saying, watch the site for our E3 coverage and stay tuned for our E3 podcasts, which we'll be doing some of those during the events, where we may or may not be more excited. Hopefully, we will be. Keep an eye on the site for E3 previews and all that good stuff. Like us on Facebook. Do that.
Say hello on Twitter. Say hello on Twitter.
Yeah.
Stalk John on Twitter.
Yeah, stalk. If we've given your game a bad review, probably me. If I've given your game a bad review, just remember that it's John you want to talk to, not me, even though I'm on Twitter as well. So, until E3 next week, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.